We're going to have a panel on key trends shaping the future of data-driven transformation. And our panel moderator is Kelli Such, and I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you.
Great. Well, good morning to everyone here joining us in the room here in Boston, and good day to everyone joining us via the live stream. Welcome to our panel discussion. As Dr. said, the key trends shaping the future of data-driven transformation in organizations at large. So by way of introduction, my name is Kelli Such, and I am the AWS America's Data Strategy Leader. I've been at AWS for about 3 years now, and I come from a background in data and analytics spanning about 30 years in the CPG, consulting, and high-tech space. At AWS, my team and I, from a data strategy perspective, we work with customers to really begin to unlock business value using data, analytics, AI, ML, and now all things, Gen AI, as that's taken the world by storm. And so we really do actually quite a bit of education work, not only with data and tech leaders, but also business leaders, and figuring out ways to help them kind of see the future state of what a modern data strategy looks like and what it could do for them. And more often than not, even though we're sitting in AWS, from a data strategy perspective, we really focus on mindset, the culture, the people, and the process changes required to really unlock that value. So I'm really excited here to be here today to moderate this panel. We know there's no future without data. Data is at the center of every single business decision, process, and application we have out there. And over the last, few years, we have seen more advancements in the data and the AI ML space, and we have seen in the past, several decades, and it's only accelerating. So we're really, as data leaders and practitioners, we're very much in interesting times now, right? With the demand for our services accelerating at such a rapid pace, we're really in an interesting place, and data is certainly at the center of it all. So we're in a really fabulous place here. So in this panel, you're going to hear from myself a bit, as well as my esteemed colleagues here, as to what the future looks like with roles, with approaches, and how you're going to look at data, from an organization's perspective. So over the course of the next, 50 minutes or so, we're going to share our perspectives, and then we'll reserve the last 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A, both here in the room as well as for the folks joining us via live stream. All right. So with that, I am going to, thank you, my panelists, for attending with me today, and I'd like you all to introduce yourself, just a little bit about who you are, your role, the organization, and the stakeholders that you serve. So Eileen, I will start with you.
Well, good morning. Thank you for including me today.
Absolutely.
My name is Eileen Vildrine, and I have the honor to serve as the Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Officer for the Department of the Air Force, which today is a military department with 2 services, United States Air Force and United States Space Force. And really our mission is to drive innovation to support our warfighters so that we can really leverage great capabilities to defend our nation. And it's really a team approach. So we're a total, what we call total force, which we're military and civilian, and it's active guard reserve. And we pull in a lot of our citizen airmen to actually support us. We bring them back into uniform periodically to bring the capabilities that they learn from industry back into our military department. And that's how I stood up our organization, was with amazing citizen airmen that we took back, borrowed from our industry partners for a time period.
Fantastic. Thanks, Eileen. Kat?
Yeah, so I'm Kat Miller. I'm CTO of Flatiron Health. We are a tech company located in New York City, and our mission is to reimagine the infrastructure of cancer care. Where that's most relevant, I think, to this conference is that one of our largest business lines, and one that I've been with for 9 years, is our real-world evidence space. So that is saying, how do we take data from patient experience and make it actually valuable for research and development? So that's, I feel like a little bit of the poser, because I do not have a CDO role, I have a CTO role. So interested to learn from everyone here as well.
Great, thanks, Kat. Basti.
Yeah, super excited to be here. I'm Basti Klapdor. I'm the Chief Data Officer, and recently also was appointed the Chief Technology Officer of Vista Print. We rebranded to Vista because you might know Vista Print. It is started 25 years as a printing company with 3 business cards. Yeah, everyone kind of got them. Yeah, it feels like. But since then, obviously, the world has evolved. Now, digital media has become way more important. Design has been way more important. So we strive now to be the small business design and marketing partner and help small businesses grow and thrive. And obviously, as you can imagine, data is super important to do that, understanding small businesses better, understanding their needs, and then personalizing the offers, automatically generating designs for them, because it's actually really, really hard to design something like that if you start with a blank canvas. So how can we help our customers do that very conveniently, very easy, and very fast? Super excited to be here.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Now we're going to jump into our first topic, and it's really around data-driven innovation and insights. And last year, we worked with CDOIQ and Tom Davenport on a CDO research study to understand those priorities, those drivers, and those challenges affecting the CDO role. And we found that 42% of chief data officers actually cite success being tied to delivering business objectives for their organization, which is a great thing. But similar to other studies in the field, we also found that the single biggest inhibitor to success was cultivating, a data-driven culture. So, in my customer engagements, along with my team's customer engagements, we've seen a few common themes here. And the first thing is around mindsets. So many people and organizations want to continue to apply kind of what I would call more traditional ways of working, where they're out there canvassing the field, collaborating and trying to get all the requirements from every single stakeholder at large before they begin to design and build something. And we really, think about that differently with regards to, we want you to not think about a platform-first approach where you build it and then you look for folks to come and utilize it. We'd rather you take a data product approach where you're partnering very closely with your key business stakeholders, data practitioners, and your tech resources, and really rallying around something that matters to the business. So platform approach versus a data product approach is a really, a key difference that we see folks struggling with. And that really comes back down to mindset and really breaking through the chains of how you used to work and thinking about different ways and innovative ways of working together. We also see many customers successful with smaller experiments or POCs, but then really struggle when they try to scale that and make collaboration and make those decisions using data more broad within the organization. A couple of things we see around that is really around upskilling and making more people comfortable and confident using data. And that's a big hurdle that sometimes we have to really work, to get the organizations over. And then very much linked to this, making people more comfortable using data, is creating a data ecosystem that allows more intelligent self-service rather than having to go and ask for permission and ask for someone to give you a set of data or a report or a dashboard. And along with self-service, we always, we hear the G word. And I know yesterday in Tom Davenport's session and then in Randy Bean's panel session, some of them were saying, hey, well, we don't want to say governance. We want to say, we're more comfortable saying enablement. But at the end of the day, we know we have to be able to exchange data in a secure and trusted manner. And we also have to ensure that the folks using the data actually understand it. They understand the context and they understand how they should be using it far more than just a collection of technical aspects. So really kind of some interesting things here when you're trying to balance, giving people the access, the right people access to the right data at the right time to use it in the moment that matters. So with that, I'm going to tee it up, and I'll start with Basti. How are you approaching innovation with data? And are there any specific initiatives that you'd like to highlight for the audience here?
Yeah. Absolutely, super happy to. First of all, I think I absolutely believe that innovation needs to happen decentrally. Before I joined Vista. I was 12 years at McKinsey. I was a partner helping clients on analytics transformation and digital transformations. And super often what I saw is that they hired a super smart team of data scientists and put them on floor 43 of the ivory tower. And they're super smart people, impact zero for the business because they're just way too far away from where the action happens, from the customers, from the product development teams that build the tech. and the customer experiences. And I think that is a pattern that we really need to break, right? We need to get the data into the hands of the people who use it, into the embedded into the algorithms, into the software pieces that drive customer experiences. And that is happening most of the time decentrally. So at Vista, it was also centrally when I joined. It was a central team of BI engineers sitting on a physical data warehouse in a basement in Waltham. And that just does not scale, right? So what we did is, first thing, blow all of that up. We said we're going to go to the data mesh. We have a data product approach. It's federated across decentralized domains. Each of these domains has a value pool. There's a value pool for marketing. There's a value pool for pricing analytics. There's a value pool for manufacturing analytics. And depending on these value pools, these domains then started to think about, hey, what are the biggest and most valuable problems that we can solve with data, with analytics, with AI, with ML? And then they took the first problem from that list, the customer problem or internal problem, and started ramping up data products in an MLP fashion, in a minimum lovable product fashion. I think there are way too many viable products out there. And people are stuck with viable products, so we strive to make them lovable in the first place, and then in that kind of then evolve and scale up and drive value. And if that proves value, keep investing, keep building. And then at one point in time, you start building and improving and hardening the platform below that. It's like a flywheel. Yeah? So drive business value, and that reinvest some of that value into building a stronger platform underneath, which was the data mesh in our case.
Great, thanks, Basti. Now, Kat, what challenges have you overcome, and or the ones that you're currently facing, right? And your role is slightly different than Basti and Eileen's. How are you creating value for your organization?
Well, I think it's really interesting to think about the Flatiron story in terms of data delivery and commercializing data. So when I started 9 years ago, we are an electronic health record company, and that is the style of data that we are providing. And 10 years ago, word on the street was that data is crap. No one wants it. Don't bother. And so our primary customers are in the pharmaceutical industry. We do also work with academics. Academics were always like, oh, give us any data you have, we'll use it. But actually, it was really interesting being like, we know there's more value here. I think we just haven't unlocked it. And our customers being like, meh. And trying to figure out, how do we build a data product that is valuable to them? And imagine all the difficulty you have with this in your internal teams when you get to talk to those people every day and you understand their problems. And now imagine that your customers are not really interested in talking to you and don't want to tell you what they're working on because that's a proprietary secret and you haven't earned their trust yet. I think it was really challenging, and it definitely took us a while to get to that minimal lovable product for sure. We were lucky that we found an early partner, and I think this is really similar to how folks would do it internally. We found an early partner that was willing to work with us on those initial, really small, not particularly lovable data products to get there. But just the amount of mapping and cleaning and thought that had to go into what questions can we answer, and over time, how do we make this able to answer more and more questions, I think is a lot of similarities to the internal struggle. The other thing I would say is, so we have a very successful data product. We're known as a data company. And you might think, okay, great, so your internal data looks beautiful too, right? Doesn't come for free, let me say that. I do think that it's, what I've learned from that is it's very easy to focus on one sort of source of data or one stream of data and have that look lovely and not have that necessarily be a culture that is pervasive across the organization. And so I think that paying attention to all the areas of data that you think are important, you're not necessarily going to get it for free just by paying attention to one of them.
Perfect. Thanks, Kat. And Eileen, the question for you is really about your data and the stakeholders, given the nature of your organization. Are there any key differences that you're addressing in your role?
Well, I like to say my organization started as a startup in a really mature organization. So my leadership journey, I started as an enlisted soldier in the Army, and now I'm the Chief Data and AI Officer in the Air Force. And to be honest, part of it was some leaders didn't even know what a Chief Data Officer was. Mm-hmm. But it shouldn't surprise you the volumes of data that you could drive insights from if you just made it visible and accessible for our workforce and to empower every airman and guardian to be part of the solution. And so part of it was finding great what I would say change champions to help us drive and demonstrate value. Another part of it was I didn't want to stop great things that were already happening. I don't want to say that there was no data work happening, because there was. So you didn't want to change things that were absolutely working. So you focused on the bringing in new capability. So it shouldn't surprise you that we didn't have the most emerging tech tools. And so we stood up what I call an emerging tech platform, where we could bring in current state and forward-leading tools safely and securely into our environment. And I think that was a critical step to work smart and bring that capability. And then now we're at part of our journey where it was time to, what I say, converge. We had some great capabilities, so we've really focused the last 18 months on building what I call our data fabric. It's not about putting everything all in one place, but it's really taking the best of breed that are across and converge. And certain mission areas that had great capability, they were the pathfinders to share that great capability with their colleagues. And then the last step is really, as we're doing that convergence, which also gives us resiliency, because you have built-in additional capabilities, but make sure that we're interoperable. Because when we do missions, whether it's humanitarian or warfighting, we don't do it alone. So we have to make sure that we seamlessly integrate with our other military departments, Army and Navy, services, joint staff, but also with our coalition partners. So it's really about us working together and leveraging the best and then scaling it out. So the scaling part is really critical.
Great. Thank you, Eileen. And one of the things we want to kind of dive into here now is around skill building, and how do you develop talent in your organizations? Because that's so key to capitalizing on the power and unlocking the power around data. And from an AWS perspective and the customers we work with, very much, we see this applies not only to the technical resources, but the non-technical resources across the organization, and really taking different approaches, with each of those constituents to really drive, value here. So with technical users, we're starting to see, certainly machine learning and now Gen AI really introducing into their development activities. How do we take away some of the heavy, undifferentiated lifting as they're coding, to allow them to free up time to do more of the creative and more of the higher value design work. So from a technical perspective, we're really trying to help perhaps more of those citizen developers and those folks maybe that are newer in the technology space to really get a jump start and utilize technology in order to help them, in their day-to-day. And then for non-technical users, it really comes back to, can we use the various capabilities we have, again, from a machine learning, as we move into Gen AI, how do we make data and insights more accessible to the masses? Not everybody needs to know how to write a SQL query. How can we bring data to them, allow them to really intimately understand the data that they're seeing? How can they understand maybe through visualizations, auto generation of insights served up to them, the generation of various narratives, even, auto detection or auto identification of trends and anomalies, beginning to employ technology to serve up a story so people don't have to be deep practitioners in a specific, type of data or a specific subject area, but more, kind of generalist. So we're really trying to, push the paradigm and really begin to make people, again, it comes down to making people more comfortable and confident in using data and lots of different constructs, in which we can do that. And that was kind of more on the technical side. And like I said, many times we also talk about the people and the process. One of the things I think that's really important in this space is really the use of communities of interest and skill guilds to help bring like-minded resources together to really share and collaborate and learn from each other. And some of the constructs we do across Amazon, really from a technical community perspective, we've got technical field communities rallying around groups of services or collection of services such as analytics or machine learning to begin just, again, sharing their work and sharing the various examples of things they're utilizing. But we also then have something we call Analyticon. It's something across the organization, anybody, whether you're technical or non-technical, you can bring your bodies of work together to showcase it over the course of a day or two. And it really is a nice way to build collaboration, build awareness, and build those connections with various like-minded individuals. So some other different, aspects, that you can employ to begin to break down the silos and make data and what people are doing with it much more pervasive. So with that, Eileen, I want to start with you. How are you developing talents, in your org?
Well, I like to say we're taking a multi-pronged approach to a multi-generational workforce. Everybody learns differently, so we can't have one solution. So, but it was probably one of the first pieces we invested in. So, first thing we did was stand up a summer intern program, and then a pathway to bring in great talent coming out of colleges and universities. Because at the time, the federal government did not have a data science career series. They do now, but it's only a year or two old. So you had to have creative ways to even bring in talent to qualify them to come in. So that was step one. Another place where we partnered was with internal academia. So our United States Air Force Academy out in Colorado Springs stood up first a data science and now first a minor and now a major. So our cadets, when they get commissioned, many of them are studying data science as a major, and they're going into all mission areas: personnel, finance, both air and space, intel. They even fly planes. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, that's creating what I'm saying, one pipeline. Another pipeline is just great online talent or online content. So we built Digital University, where we do competency-based skill building moving forward. And it really helps when you have one of your first customers, the former chief of space operations, the 4-star general, talking about how he's taking a Python class. And I was just like how awesome is that, okay? And that's, when, that's leadership by example. Mm-hmm. But it's really about investing through your whole curriculum and your whole career. One of the learning experiences that I find the most enjoyable is we have an AI accelerator at MIT. We have airmen and guardians doing research with some of the top AI researchers just a mile down the street in Technology Square. And they run we call them first datathons, now we call them challenges. The first datathon was done during COVID. We worked in virtual teams, and in a 3-day gamified solution, they took a very manual business process, automated it with a 92% accuracy, and it's in production today. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And then we've scaled them out. So now we include academic universities. We scaled it out to small business. So any given time, you can go out to aia.mit.edu/challenges, and anybody can actually join a challenge and be part of the solution. So if you have somebody home for the summer that really wants to learn a little bit about it and wants to be part, help defend their nation, our challenge program is a great service learning opportunity, and everybody wants to win a competition. So it's there's bragging rights there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Eileen. Kat, what are you seeing with regards to skills and talent at Flatiron?
Yeah, I would say I don't feel the pain point of talent necessarily, although I will say if you want experienced ML engineers, they're very expensive right now. Wonder why. But what I do see is almost an interest gap, and I think there's two parts to this. The first is I think it's very hard for a lot of people to conceptualize data as a product, whether it's an external product or an internal product. It's not tangible, it's not a website, and it can be really hard to appreciate it and work with it. And so I think we've had challenges over the years of finding product managers and engineers, and even to some extent, data-focused people who could really think about that as a product and think about that as an endpoint, or information as an endpoint, rather than, well, I want to build a cool visualization for it. And no shade to the visualization, but that's not always the only thing you're going for. And so I think folks who could really think about, like, oh, adding this endpoint for cancer would be a really valuable thing, because then people could do this kind of research on it. That's been a challenge. I think the other challenge is there is so much, I'll call it like worky work in working with data. The data cleaning, the deep dives into why is this field called height version 2? Like, how could that be possible? There's so much like dumpster diving. There's so much cleaning. There's so much, I changed one thing in my pipeline and everything changed. Why did that happen? There's so much like deep diving that isn't that interesting to folks over time. Like, even actually folks who want to do ML, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you have people who are like really excited about ML, and then a year later they realize that they are doing 10 regressions a day, and that's it. That's their job, doing regressions. And they're like, oh, this isn't as exciting as I thought. It's not all cutting edge stuff. I have had challenges with that, and so that's where we think about it from a perspective of, okay, who are the maybe more junior people who will learn a lot from this and then graduate from it. Obviously, a great pipeline to have. Also interested in what are the tools? How do we limit the amount of that work that has to be done? How do we make machines do more of that work? But that's where I really find the talent gap or the interest gap or the difficulty in making sure that we can keep a healthy organization with people who are engaged and interested, doing that work really well.
Right. No, fabulous insights. And I think one of the areas that's really important here when we talk about upskilling and talent development, has to do with the promotion of data literacy and making your organization more literate across the organization, not in just some selected pods here. And I think this is really fundamental when you're trying to change the culture of an organization and how that organization not only views data, but how they utilize it and utilize it on a regular, consistent, and a sustainable basis. Many of the organizations that we work, always, and I think we've always as practitioners have strived to, share, discover, understand, access, and use data in a very fluid manner to spur innovation, to spur time to market. But there was always, challenges there. Technology used to get in our way quite often. Really what we're trying to, kind of subscribe to here, and from an Amazon approach, we've introduced this concept called a modern data community. And it's really, a fairly simple approach where you have a producer-consumer model, where you have data producers sharing data broadly, making that discoverable for a body of folks in the organization. And those consumers really can then be much more educated because they can look at a variety of technical aspects. They can look at a variety of business aspects related to that data. Again, this goes back to making folks more comfortable and confident in the data they're using to employ, in solutions as well as, help make decisions. So it's really kind of an interesting kind of construct, really. How do you begin to break down those silos? And so, Basti, I wanted to tee up to you kind of your thinking around data literacy and some of the frameworks and the mechanisms you're using to tackle that.
Yeah. So first of all, it's super important that the data professionals, right, each and every of the data professionals you have at the company, they serve as ambassadors. So at Vista, we've grown the data team from 60 people to 300 people over the last 2.5 or 3 years. And that's great because we now have 300 ambassadors in the core, so to say, who help our colleagues be more data literate and help them understand the value of data. But then in the end, if it comes to the literacy outside of the data professionals, because we don't only want the data people to know data, we want everyone who needs to drive a decision to have the right data in the right moment of time, in the right quality, then it really comes, in my view, to 4 things, how you drive change. And that's coming back to my McKinsey experience. That's the McKinsey influence model. So I'll tell you some little secrets here. Yeah. So first of all, you got to have the right tools and the right processes in place. Yeah. So that means the right data products that are also fun to use, right, and comes back to the lovable part, right? And we can build these products with the right data product teams, with the right people on there, including UX designers who really emphasize with the users. Then training, right? You need to be able to do that, right? So that comes all of the university approaches, training concepts, all of that, and really also obviously making these courses and trainings engaging, interesting, and not boring, and not a check mark, right? Oh, like the annual compliance training, right? Like, oh God, I need to do this data training, right? And I think the third thing is really embedding it also into the people processes. So for example, what we did is make being data-driven a core value at Vista in our Vista behaviors. That's basically our cultural drivers. And everyone, this is a topic, is one topic of every performance evaluation, right? How did you kind of show that behavior, being data-driven? This is part of our interview guidelines, be data-driven. And this is part of our interview routines. And then, but all of these three things, right, they don't help if the fourth thing is missing. And the fourth thing is role modeling, and helping people to understand the conviction. And there's a great story, a great example at Vista. The last 2-3 years, we're really struggling to get more data in our software development teams, in the product development teams. Because we had the leaders of these teams, they were not really data-driven, right? And if they don't kind of lead with that, then it's super teams just weren't interested. They had the training, they had the tools, it was in part of the processes, but there wasn't data used to develop better products. Now suddenly, and it's often that simple, we have a new chief product officer, Christina, she's amazing, and she's incredibly data-driven. And that flipped the switch, right? Now all of these product development teams, they are thirsty for data, and they want that, and they want to use data. So all of these four things need to be in place in my experience.
Perfect. Thanks, Basti. Now, the next topic I wanted to dive into, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, is Gen AI, right? It's all the rage, in the world right now, and we certainly can't have a data leaders panel without diving a little bit more into the depths of that, right? And what y'all are doing there. I know from an Amazon perspective, every single customer we're working with is asking us from a data strategy perspective, what about Gen AI, and how can we quickly adopt that into our organization? And our fundamental approach from a data strategy perspective is really start with a business use case, start with a business problem that you're looking to solve or an opportunity that you're looking to unlock. Don't tackle this from just a tech perspective, because you're going to be left with just a lot of cool, fun POCs, right? But nothing that you're going to be able to scale and really provide any sort of value to your organization, at a scale level. So we always recommend you start with a business use case, begin to collaborate with your data, tech, and business leaders together on a vision. What are those experiences that you're looking to create for a collection of stakeholders? And really start with that and use that vision to inform the data required, the people that you need to engage, as well as the technology solution tool set partners that you may need to bring to bear. So really allow the vision to drive, fit for purpose what data and fit for purpose technology. Don't take a technology first approach, which can be kind of different, from an AWS perspective. We're saying don't start with a technology, start with a business problem. As a result of these conversations, we're seeing a lot of what we call Gen AI washing, where everybody wants to apply that hammer to the problem they're trying to solve. And sometimes in absence of knowing what problem they're actually trying to solve. So we really encourage you to take a very cautious, gosh, my hand keeps hitting that, a very cautious approach where, again, fit for purpose. Traditional ML, it's good, it's useful, and that's a lot of times going to be used for generating recommendations, being predictive, and generating prescriptive actions. You don't have to generate content in all cases in order to achieve what you're going after. Again, let the vision dictate it. And again, with all things Gen AI, security, privacy, top of mind for everyone. Nobody wants to be in the papers where you've accidentally shared customer information or you've shared proprietary organization information. And my gosh, Eileen, imagine the world what that would look like, right? It can be, it's an intense time, and so you want to, again, security, privacy have to be at the forefront of your minds. So one of the things, again, kind of Amazon's approach here with Gen AI is really going to allow you to access a wide variety of these large language models or foundational models, and access those via an API, where you can marry that foundational model of your choice, that pre-trained model that you want to, really leverage for your purpose, but then marry it with your organization's data. But you're going to do that in a secure environment. And so we really subscribe to the approach where you're going to bring the model, that LLM, to your enterprise data and begin to work with it, to fine tune it, to add context so it becomes more relevant for your own business. So that's really kind of a fundamental approach that we're taking here. Security and privacy, the number one thing that we're considering here. And again, always thinking about it in a fit for purpose way. So with that, Eileen, would love to hear your thoughts around responsible AI and your perspective in integrating this into your data strategy.
Well, I think that we begin by saying that responsible AI use is everybody's responsibility. It's not a single individual, but we have taken an approach where we've identified a leader. So I have a person on my team, an amazing airman, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Chapa, and he wears the responsible AI lead. He is our voice as a military department. And you say, I literally looked with leadership. Why was he picked? I like to say he was my purple squirrel. He was, he is a pilot who happens to have his PhD from Oxford in morality and ethics. Wow. It was really thinking differently, not the legal side, because just yesterday, while we were all here, at least one person on my team, probably more, was streaming the Senate had a open hearing yesterday on responsible AI use for the warfighter, because where does there need to be a human in the loop? Mm-hmm. And really important components. The fact that we're having this discussion up front rather than trying to retrofit later on, I think is really important. But part of Colonel Chapa's role is to really make sure that every single airman, every single guardian, our whole workforce is thinking about it. Not just one, but it's all of us working together, because we're stronger as a team. And I think that we're still early in the journey. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just about us doing it alone, but this is one of those places where we're going to need our academic partners, we're going to need our industry partners. We have to work together to really get it right and build that foundation. So,
early. Thanks, Eileen. Now, Katz, has Gen AI changed the way you think about your data strategy, and what kind of use cases are you envisioning for the org?
Well, the first thing that Gen AI has changed in my life is that I'm suddenly the belle of the ball, and everyone wants to talk to me. These exec team meetings that used to be like, finances. Now they're finances, and also talk to us about Gen AI. So it's a strange place to be. I'm genuinely excited about it, and I would say I did my degree in AI a long time ago. I've been very skeptical of it for a very long time, and it's the first time I'm actually excited about it. I think the way we're approaching it, I think there's sort of two lenses. One, from our product perspective, where did these capabilities change the fundamental assumptions that went into our roadmaps? So what do they make easy that used to be hard, such that we estimated something as a long time or said we weren't going to do it? So I think across basically all of our products, we're going back and saying, what is this? What is possible now that wasn't before, and does that actually? Should we change it, right? So it doesn't start with the technology. Mm-hmm. It's asking what are the problems that we were trying to solve that were hard that maybe are easier now. And the part that I'm driving directly that I'm actually very excited about is changing the way we work. And obviously this has been in the news a lot, so this is not new information to anyone. The way I've been approaching it is both a top-down and a grounds-up. So from a grounds-up, making sure that I have a way to enable people to experiment. Obviously, with the considerations of privacy, we are custodians of patient data, and there are many, many things that we need to be careful about with that, but everyone has confidential data, everyone has things that they need to be very careful about. So finding a path to enable people to experiment is one of those things, and I've seen some really great stuff coming through there. You talked about not everyone can learn SQL. You know what's really good at writing SQL? GPT-4. And so there's some really cool opportunities in that space. Just another example, I was in the kitchen yesterday and someone came up to me and he's like, so I downloaded all of our Confluence documents and I used local GPT on them, and then I asked them a question and they answered it. So we have in 5 minutes we had a free Stack Overflow for our own data. So there's lots of really exciting stuff there. So there's the grounds up, what are people trying? And then there's the top down, where are there those organizations that maybe aren't going to be thinking as proactively about it? Where do I see opportunity where I want to go and interview and talk to the leaders of different functions and organizations and say, tell me your problems, let's talk about where there might be tools that solve your problems. So maybe a good example is chatbots. I think there's a lot of folks who think of chatbots as that incredibly obnoxious thing that you should never do to your customers if you actually like them, right? I had this experience yesterday where a chatbot, I asked me a question, I gave it an answer and asked me the same question again. It was infuriating. But actually, next-gen chatbots are a different thing. Now, if you say, okay, I'd love what if I had something where a customer could ask any question, and if it existed in our knowledge base, it would give it to them, and then if it didn't, it would ask more questions so that when I hop on, I have all the information. Well, that's much more appealing. And so I think my job in that regard is to bridge that gap of, okay, hey, here's what's out there now, or here's what maybe you're assuming exists, and here's what the reality is, and then working with those leaders to implement those solutions. So I think there's huge opportunity kind of spread across all the ways we work that I'm very excited about.
Perfect. Thanks, Kat. Basti, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously Gen AI is incredibly powerful and incredibly important also for a company like Vista, right? Where again, our customers want something like that and they start with a blank canvas. So generative AI naturally can help them to fill that with great content that looks also amazing. So we've been already experimenting and actually also have products in production that use models like Midjourney or DALL-E 2, for example, for exactly these tasks. Now we're complementing that with ChatGPT and large language models, which we had internally used for quite some time on the care side, customer care side. We have 2,000 care agents, so mining the knowledge bases better, right? Summarizing transcripts, understanding what customers, why they really are contacting us. Because the product is broken or because the website doesn't work, and things like that. So there are many use cases that are already in production. I think what we've seen from the experience is that there's, again, little value of having a central generative AI roadmap, right? Because that's typically, if there's a big thing like that coming up, a big new technology, right? There's typically executives tend to say, okay, we need a strategy around that, and we need a roadmap around that, a central roadmap. And again, I think this is the ivory tower danger coming in here, that we need, what I need to do and what we as technologists need to do, and you're doing it as well, as you just said, we need to enable our teams across the organization to adopt these techniques as easy as possible. So it's about creating paved pathways, and that's what we're trying to do, make it as easy as possible, as simple as possible to experiment, put things out like an AI policy that gives team members guidance on what they can do, and if they do it, how they should be approaching it, right? For example, what are the risks, right? Where they should do risk assessments with regards to IP or privacy when they start adopting these things. But it's really about kind of creating paved paths for teams to adopt that. Yeah? And then, as you said, having conversations with people who don't adopt it, right? Mm-hmm. Why are you not using it, right? It could be completely change the game. How you write emails, advertising or marketing emails, how you translate them into 15 countries, how do you create content for SEO pages or for content marketing, right? So I think these are then the discussions where more top-down inspiration also helps.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. Now, I think we just, really just touched on the surface of some really, key topics that are affecting the CDO roles. We talked about how do you begin to innovate with data, make it more prevalent, the focus on data products, various frameworks, responsible AI, and how Gen AI is going to be tackled, at least in the near future here. So can go for hours probably on each of these subjects alone, right? So the final question for you all is, what is one piece of advice you would give to your peers, both here and at large? Eileen, I'll start with you.
I like to say data and AI are team sports. If you try to do it by yourself, you're not going to be as successful as you can working collaboratively across the enterprise. When I first stood up, I literally worked in the Pentagon and I knocked on doors for senior leaders, specifically those in uniform, that could be my executive change agents. And we partnered on the first use cases to demonstrate value. And so I think that whole collaborative team approach is the key to long-term success.
Perfect. Kat?
Start as early as possible. It is so hard to break down the silos later, or go back to every contract you've ever done and try to extract information from it rather than doing it proactively. It's maybe GPT is making that easier, but it is much harder to retrofit than to find an early application and build with that.
Yeah, you heard it many times, start with a specific business or customer problem, right? And then leverage the beauty of cross-functional teams, of the product managers, of the data scientists and data engineers, but also of UX, right? Which I think is highly underestimated in the data field, right? Emphasizing with the users, right? Because that can just drive the adoption up so much. And having these three legs of the stool, as it's often called in product management and modern product delivery, work together to make sure that this customer problem is solved through a solution that is valuable for the customer and viable for the business. That's typically the PM task. That is feasible. That is typically the part where the tech folks come in, the data scientists, the data engineers, because they know the art of the possible, including Gen AI, as well as is usable. And that's the user experience part, right? So if all of these functions play together on product teams, to which you assign only the problem, not the solution, but only the problem, then magic happens in my experience.
Absolutely. To complement that, and we heard it yesterday in one of the panel discussions, but we really, from an AWS perspective and a data strategy perspective, say, you want to think big. You want to create these visions that, are steeped in business value, that are addressing business problems. Start small. How do you begin to take those first steps? Lay the pavers of whether it be a new data and analytics foundation or leverage the existing pavers, begin to add in additional capabilities based upon the need, and then scale fast and use feedback, use data to really inform how you're going to continue to make that flywheel spin. To us, that's really kind of the secret of the success. It sounds trite, but it's really think big, start small, and scale fast that I think complements what you said, Basti. So with that, before I open it up to the floor for questions, I want to note two things. One, you all will see a QR code both here in the room and online. By clicking on that, you'll get access to a couple of different artifacts we have from an AWS perspective. One, you'll have access to the CDOIQ research study we did with Tom Davenport last year. You'll have that, as well as a new CDO white paper we wrote from an AWS perspective, outlining the various components of a modern data strategy. So mindset, people, process, and culture. So, a great white paper for y'all to check out. The other thing I want to make you aware of is that everybody at CDOIQ this year, you will have access and we'll be getting a survey as we begin our 2023 CDOIQ research paper with both Tom Davenport and Randy Bean this year. So we would encourage you all to, share your experiences, and participate as appropriate. So with that, I'm going to open it to the floor for any questions for myself or our panelists, and then go virtually.
Hello, hi, this is Prashasti from ex-Silicon Valley Bank. Hi, everyone. Okay, so talking of PPT, right, people, process, and technology, I quickly wanted to understand from the people standpoint, right? Like you said, when we need a product-driven data person, you look for someone who has product, awareness, and also technology and data awareness. So if you're building up and start soon, like you said, and we want to find skills for Gen AI, what kind of person, because we can find someone with a 10-year of resume in Gen AI, right? So what kind of person do you think would be a good fit to kickstart that program in any organization, big or small?
Who wants to take it? Aussie?
Happy to take it. So you need a person that understands the tech as well as the business, right? If you are looking for a leader in that area, right? And that's typically this translator profile, right? Somebody understanding business, understanding math, right? Or Gen AI, right? Which is typically math or computer science, and then back and forth, and then scoping that. But then that's the leadership role, right? But the beauty is that person doesn't need to build everything, right? And then you come back to a cross-functional team. And because it's very hard to find these unicorns, right? The beauty is, again, you have the three-legged stool. You have a product manager emphasizing with the customer. You have technical people who know how to build it from a technical side and what the art of the possible is. So data scientists, data engineers. And then you also have UX people. So in that, again, that three-legged stool, that leadership team needs to come together to understand what the customer problem is and think about the solutions. And that's what I would recommend to have in the room, because that, and from day one, right? It's not the PM just understanding what the problem is, the product manager, and then handing the stories and the epics to the technical people. But the technical need to be in there from day one. And I think that is where, again, the magic happens if you have all of these three disciplines together.
Yeah, no, I'll just.
We have a number. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to agree and build on it a little bit. Like, I don't think you need your product leader to be a deep expert in AI. You need them to be able to learn and read some material and understand what it can do. But I think that it's a mistake to say that's the one thing that we need.
Mm-hmm.
We have a number of questions online. Let's alternate here. We have a question. Do you measure the progress on data literacy or data-driven culture? And if yes, how do you do that?
Do you guys measure?
I would say that I think we have some unique performance indicators. So one of the things that I look at is for my military personnel, it's not when they come to my office, it's a non-traditional role. And it's kind of, it's a risk to their, because they're not the tradition, they're doing a traditional, but what I have looked at is that I don't also get to sit on the promotion boards, but my people are getting promoted. They're getting promoted on the first look. They're getting selected for command, which is really important for their career sets on first looks. And I know that our winning streak someday will not be perfect, but when general officers are sitting on promotion boards and selection boards and they're picking these people, they're elevating them to the top, I think that's a first indicator of true culture change moving forward. When you see your staff getting selected for higher responsibilities in functional areas, I think that's the other key, which absolutely is hard on us because it makes you have more turnover, but it also makes people want to come to your team. So so I think that's one of the performance. And are people staying? And are they staying in good ways? They're staying because they're getting promoted. They're getting more richer opportunities moving forward. So I think that's how we're beginning to look at it. We do the traditional stuff, but I think that's more important.
Yeah. And I think you can also, just one thing to add on that, as we think about business value, it's like, what business value are you pulling through by using the collection of data products at your disposal, however you're getting a hold of them, and being able to understand your contribution. And that's a hard one, right? It really is. You have to subscribe to a different mindset and how you're going to count value. But we heard a lot about that yesterday, saying, can you partner with finance and say, all right, what value did this bring to the organization? And from a data perspective, if you're using it, tick, and I had influence over that. So just another alternative way to think about it through the business value lens.
And maybe just to add to that, this is also a bit how we think about it, right? Because being data literate is not the goal and the outcome in itself, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's a way how to make people use data, right? And that's actually what we measure is the usage of self-service data products across different areas, right? And so we say, hey, there are 150 people in country teams, and in these country teams, for them, these 3 data products are the relevant products. They should look at that at least on a weekly basis. So we actually are measuring the penetration of weekly active users in these different regions, basically using these data products, and we're trying to get this number up. And maybe data literacy sometimes is the thing. Maybe sometimes the product is just bad, and we need to improve the product.
Absolutely.
So that's the
Right. Thanks for that.
Other questions here? Behind you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the conversation, wonderful conversation. This is Kiko Machin from Spain. I'm the Chief Data Officer at IE University. I'm ex-McKinsey also. My question is about one of the most important problems that we're facing now. That is how to avoid data leakage. So, Basti, you mentioned you have a policy, right? But from my point of view, that is not enough to control that. We are creating some products in like gateways, to avoid that confidential information out of your organization. So, how you are tackling this?
Yeah, very good question. I would love to hear your perspective as well, as you're handling patient data. So I'm sure we can learn something from you. It's a combination of different facts, right? It's policies, it's standards that need to be very clear and need to be out there. So people need to do need to know what they can do, what they should not be doing. It's about trainings, right? Skill building, right? To make sure kind of they can apply that in their day-to-day. But then the most important thing that we figured out is, how do we help teams better? You can write a gazillion of laws and rules and RFCs and InfoSec guidelines, right? In the end, and then you can ask teams annually sign that, right? That you comply to that, right? But if they don't have any tools to find out, right, are we actually complying with the new code that we just shipped? Is this compliant or not? Then it doesn't help it. So what we did is starting to build actually scrapers. Scrapers that scrape Git, where all of our code sits and looks for anti-patterns. For example, there's a rule, one of these rules and standards that we need to rotate keys, API keys, every 90 days, right? And then what we now do is we've built a scraper that just checks, have these keys been rotated? If they have not been rotated, then the respective team is informed and they get an info and say, hey, please rotate your team, right? And obviously we also report that out, right? We see which teams are rotating, and there are 20 other of these scrapers that look for these anti-patterns and help the teams to adopt the best practices there.
Yeah, I would say for us, I would draw a distinction between confidential data and patient data, because patient data is sacrosanct. It's locked down. It doesn't go anywhere that's not safe. And that's a culture. Every single person knows that, not only would it be detrimental to our business if it ever got out, but that's incredibly harmful to the patients. And we all live and breathe that. And that's sort of easy because people get it, right? They don't want their own data out there. Confidential data is actually a really different beast. And what's actually been interesting, I've had this process around people doing experiments with LLMs that's involved, a very lightweight, fill out what you want to do, and I approve it. And what's actually been good about that is I can take some risk, right? So I'm not letting zero confidential information out, because if I did that, then there's a lot of things we can't experiment with. But I'm sort of taking on the risk arbiter and saying I'm comfortable with that risk. And that's actually, I think, been really positive and empowering in terms of people feel like, okay, there's a process, and sometimes I'll get a no and sometimes I'll get a yes, but I understand why.
One more question, then we'll have time. Yeah, you need to use the microphone for people online.
Can you repeat your question, please?
I just had a quick question on the LLM that you brought up. Are you using private instance, or are you using, some sort of open source model that you're training yourselves?
Everything, all of it. I think this is probably most people's answer.
But not shipping it up to OpenAI, right?
Well, it depends.
Where
So
you have
when I
risk.
say confidential information, so am I shipping our customers' plans? No. But am I willing to ship maybe the schema of our demographics database, which is technically confidential, but I bet all of you out here could draw it, yourselves. Yes. And so I think that maybe what I come to is that most organizations, I think, are not great at this sort of labeling of confidential data. It's a wide brush. And so what I have the power to do is say, okay, that is something that is really important to our business or really important to our customers. And again, patient data is a totally different conversation. versus, you know, a kind of legal checkbox of like, okay, everything is confidential information and it can't go out. And the reason we're doing that, by the way, is that obviously we're building secure environments, we have secure environments, but there are, you know, Bard does some things better than ChatGPT. Like, it's actually important to be able to use the technology that's out there, again, where I can deem that the risk is relatively low.
Super thoughtful answer. Thank you.
Very quick, if we can do one more,
Sure.
one more online. So, in another panel, we heard that data leaders spend a lot of time on internal communication, alignment with business leaders, and evangelism. Is that true for you, and how are you doing that effectively?
I'm going to say absolutely. When I first started, I knocked on doors in the building, and I think that we cultivate those relationships. One of the places where we have used citizen airmen, we brought in reservists back into uniform, and we put them in centers of gravity so that they would have a local coach or mentor to do local use cases. I would say like direct access to our innovation lab. So it's really about investing in the people and building that relationship at all levels, junior airmen all the way through general officer. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't worry about who gets the credit. Let your customer, your stakeholder shine.
Love it.
And I think that's all the time that we have for our panel today. I appreciate everyone's participation. Thanks to all of you panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.